sucking out the emails of the Indian equivalent of the Central Bureau of Investigation. We're sucking out all those emails of the Central Bureau of Investigation. So there's an example where the strong centralization of information resulted in Indian telecommunications being accessible to the Chinese. And can we really say that this equipment which is installed secretly, is being properly controlled, or other people getting control to it?
Okay. I'm sure people in the audience will have questions about that. I just want to take you to another issue that affects all of us in India. There was a lot of publicity some months ago when a banker from Julius Baer handed over some CDs to you. There was supposed to be information about secret bank accounts held by Indians with Julius Baer in the Cayman Islands. We haven't heard much more about it. What's happening to that story?
One of the alleged whistleblowers concerned, Rudolf Elmer, was taken by the Swiss government, put in prison for over 6 months. He is being released, but he is about to face trial, and there has been legal actions, continuing legal actions against him in the past week. And for that reason, unfortunately, I can't speak about information related to Swiss banks that would seem to border on his case, unfortunately. But once his case is over, then perhaps I can speak in greater detail.
Has Mr. Elmer actually given you the information?
Not suggesting.
Has he actually given you the information? Do you have it?
That I could never suggest that any individual had given us information, especially one that was in such a precarious legal position. And that is all I can say about the matter.
Is what you're saying that we can't expect this information to be released in the near future?
WikiLeaks obtains now and then significant banking information, so I imagine that there will be additional releases of banking information so there will almost certainly be releases of banking information which affect India in the coming year. But I feel that I cannot speak further about this subject because...
But is it fair to conclude from what you're saying?
We must protect our people.
Of course, but is it fair to conclude that within the next year some information will be released?
Yes.
All right, okay. Let me throw this open to the audience. The gentleman there, get your microphones.
Julian, my name is Sanjeev Nanda. I'm a chartered accountant. What I wanted to ask you about is, do you think that we need some international law now in place which should control all these governments not priving into this kind of information except for security reasons, and certainly not giving them to companies for corporate use or for misuse, whatever you want to call it? And I want to, thank you for being a whistleblower to the world.
Mr. Assange?
I'm rather cynical about the way the rule of law is going, especially for institutions which are involved in very complex work. You can conceal things through secrecy, and you can conceal things through complexity. And the offshore banking sector uses both methods, complexity and secrecy. Similarly, sophisticated entire nation surveillance systems are operated by institutions which are both secret, and the methods that they use are complex and abstract. So I think we should all strive to regulate these institutions by rule of law, especially by forcing them to be open and accountable about some of the methods that they use and where they've been used, and reporting requirements and so on. And as far as the RTI can encapsulate the data that they hold to be subject to it as well. But I think that they are fundamentally difficult to account institutions, that the rule of law has never really applied to them. They've always thrived outside the rule of law and made sure that they've thrived outside the rule of law. And part of the one, they've done that in a number of ways. One, because they collect such a vast amount of information, they can use that information as leverage on decision makers in government. Number two, that they terrorize people in government saying, you must let us continue what we are doing or else you'll be blown up by terrorists, the Chinese will invade, the Russians will fire missiles at us, etc. And there's no one else that politicians and other decision makers can go to and say, is it true what these people are telling me? Do we really need to make sure that they are not responsible under the law, that they can do everything in secret? Because these organizations, and it's true for almost every country, tell politicians and other decision makers that the information that they are supplying to them is classified and they will be prosecuted if they consult with anyone else about it. So it's an old shtick dating back at least 50 years that is used to terrorize people into supplying money and special laws that allow those institutions to operate in an unfettered manner. So I think the chances for holding them to account by rule of law are remote and increasingly remote.
Let me ask somebody else a question.
But there are other ways to deal with what is going on. And that is by using security technology. And that's a sector that perhaps India should look into developing. So that is encrypted telephone calls, encrypted emails, and so on. Yes, it does assist organized crime groups, but I think we are in the delicate situation now where we're either going to end up in a totalitarian surveillance state where surveillance is total and that information is shared with similar states to create transnational security elites, or we're simply going to have to permit criminals to use encryption simply so that us as individuals and business leaders who don't want to be under the thumb of security businesses can operate with some confidence.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with a question? Gentleman there.
Hi, my name is Rajesh Shah. On this point which you just mentioned just now, the balance, shouldn't we ask people as to whether they are ready to give up some amount of privacy, but a much greater degree of security, because that is an issue, whether that's played up by the press or by the leaders, that is still an important issue. So don't you think this is something that there should be a way to assess it? I mean, there are those who laud you, call you a whistleblower and take out marches in your favor, but there are those who also call you a terrorist. So how do you see this, and how do you see your own work pan out over the next 2 or 3 years, given all the problems you have?
Of course, we must let people assess the situation. The problem is that these companies and intelligence agencies operate in secret. And until yesterday, was it really known that whole states have their entire populations being recorded permanently? This is not a matter of am I or are you suspected of being engaged in terrorist activity, and therefore an intelligence agency decides that it's going to monitor you for a little while to see if that allegation is borne out. That is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is bulk surveillance of an entire nation and its telecommunications traffic. Not to even look for particular things in real time and then assess them, although that does happen, but to permanently record it. What sort of government are we going to have in 6 years' time, in 10 years' time? What's it going to be like? will it develop an interest in your brother or your father or one of your children and decide to go back in time to understand the connection between you and them? And that is how these systems are advertised by companies like Vastec. You can travel back in time, investigate back in time, because you have intercepted the entire nation's telephone calls and stored billions of hours of telecommunications content. I think that is a radically different regime to what people believe to be the case. So when we ask how much liberty will people give up for security, well, they actually have to know how much liberty they are giving up for security. And they're giving up an extraordinary amount of liberty and putting unaware faith that these organizations can be trusted with such a vast amount of detailed personal history from a whole society. I don't think that's the covenant that we agreed to accept, that we would give up such a vast amount of liberty about our lives. I don't think we agreed to accept that. And we may choose to accept that if the security threats are high enough. Perhaps we will choose to accept that. But we must choose knowingly. And I think these agencies and companies who support them, they, in their increased gain of power, they will have to give something up as well. We simply cannot have them gaining this vast new powers which the communications revolution has given them and the increasing computational speed has given them, without them giving something back. They must give back some accountability.
All right. Let me ask somebody else. Somebody at the back? Gentleman there? Can somebody give the gentleman the microphone, please? He's here.
Hi, Julian. This is Saransh Mehta.
You're not, mic's not working.
Hello.
Still not working. Try that. They've given you another one. Try that.
Hi, this is Saransh Mehta. Hi, Julian. In the kind of work, whistleblowing work you're in, and you're poking fingers right at the nerves of the government, do you actually expect organizations like MasterCard and Visa to go against their governments and support you? And what sort of support do you want from the world to run your organization? What are you expecting from India so that you can probably...
Yeah. So you know, who in the audience has a Visa card in their pocket or a MasterCard in their pocket?
For you, yeah.
I imagine that's all of you.
Yeah.
So, but you are in India. India is an independent country. It has its own nuclear weapon system. It has 1.2 billion people. It should be an independent country, and in many ways, culturally, it is quite an independent country, and that's something it should be proud of. But if you go to use your Visa card as an Indian to support an organization that you believe in, and which the Indian government is not opposed to, WikiLeaks, you cannot do it. Indian sovereignty is directly affected by these companies. You do not have economic sovereignty within India, because when you go to express that economic sovereignty by supporting an organization like WikiLeaks to hold corrupt organizations and security states to account, you cannot do it. So US foreign policy is right there in your pocket in India, affecting your ability to act right now. And that is something that should concern all of us. So do I expect that these companies will in fact go against their government? Well, is it their government? You know, Visa Europe is registered in London. Visa India is registered in India. But why, and your bank, your Visa card in India is registered to an Indian bank. And yet the Indian bank and Visa India are not able to act like Indian companies. Within the United